Listen, her daughter is an orphan named Heidi. Her father and mother have passed away, poor thing, and she has no one in the world except her aunt. But her aunt gets a job far from the village, and it's not allowed for her to take Heidi with her. And it was a problem for her because Heidi needs someone to take care of her. And because her grandfather is the last person left in her family, the aunt is forced to take her to him. Her grandfather lives in an isolated place on the mountain far from the village. And that's because he has a bad reputation, and no one in the entire village can stand him. He's known for being a violent person with no mercy in his heart. The aunt arrives with sweet Heidi at his house, but he was frowning and his face was wrinkled, not even welcoming them. So the aunt asks him to take care of his granddaughter because she has no one else in the world but him. He tells her to take her and leave, saying he doesn't want a headache. At that moment, the aunt has no choice but to put the grandfather in a situation where he has to accept. And she leaves Heidi in front of the house and walks away, telling her not to worry, he won't harm you. The grandfather gets angry, takes Heidi and tells her to go after her aunt. But Heidi responds with all innocence, saying, "Auntie doesn't want me, I have no one but you, Grandpa." However, his heart was hard and he leaves her alone, goes inside and shuts the door. Heidi keeps calling out to him, but it's no use. At that time, she finds no place to sleep except the animal barn. The next day, he enters the barn and gives her some milk to drink while he figures out how to get her out of there. After that, he takes her to the priest in the town and tells him, "I don't want this girl to live with me. Find someone to adopt her." The priest examines her and finds her health is good, and he tells him that he will look for someone to adopt her, but the girl must stay with you until I find someone to adopt her. The grandfather said to him, "Oh no, I'm telling you, I can't stand her. I don't want her to live with me." So the priest tells him that he must fulfill his religious duty and take her to live with him until he finds someone to adopt her. Indeed, he is forced to take her home, and as soon as she arrives at his house, she stands at the door and says to him, "I'll sleep in the barn, Grandpa, so I don't bother you." He tells her, "No, come sleep with me in the house, but keep in mind, in 2 or 3 days, you'll be leaving here." And since there's only one bed in the whole house, she goes up to the second floor. She finds only straw in front of her, so she asks the grandfather if she can sleep on the straw, and he agrees. She is happy and at the peak of her joy, and she goes down to hug him because he was kind to her and let her sleep in the house with him. Later, a boy named Peter arrives at the place, and he is responsible for taking care of the sheep. The grandfather asks him to take Heidi up the mountains to give him some peace of mind from her. Indeed, Heidi walks with Peter as he tends to the sheep, and she is happy running and playing with the goats. While she is playing, Peter takes advantage of the fact that he takes her sandwiches from her bag and eats them. When Heidi returns, she doesn't find her food and asks him, "Did you eat the food?" He lies to her and says, "No, it didn't happen. Surely one of the goats ate it." Moments later, Peter finds 2 goats butting heads, so he gets angry at them and grabs his stick and starts hitting them with it. But Heidi feels sorry for the goats and stops him from doing that. She tells him that they are living creatures with flesh and blood and they feel pain just like us. He replies that if they keep butting heads like that, their milk production decreases. So she tells him, "If you don't hit them, I'll give you half of my food every day." He promises her that he won't hit them, feeling happy. In this way, he secures a nice meal every day. She learns. The days go by and every day they go out together to feed the goats. Heidi was happy and loved being out in the beautiful nature. Even Peter was happy because he felt lonely, and finally he found someone lovely to spend his time with. One day, Heidi tells him that her grandfather will take her to the priest when someone wants to adopt her. Peter gets upset by this news because he will feel lonely again. Heidi grows closer to her grandfather, and his heart begins to soften and love her because of her innocence and kindness. After that, she takes her things and insists on sleeping in the barn. Her grandfather asks her if Peter told her anything about him, but Heidi remains silent and doesn't respond. So he tells her, "Look, my daughter, everything that's said about me is just rumors. The village and I will always be like siblings. And it's up to you to believe what you hear or believe what you see." Heidi is convinced by his words, hugs him and says, "I have no one but you, Grandpa." She starts to grow more attached to him day by day and loves him even more. One day, she finds that her grandfather has made a new chair in the house, so she asks him, "Is this chair for me, Grandpa?" He tells her, "Of course, my dear, there's no one else living with me." At that moment, she feels happy and understands that her grandfather has agreed for her to live with him. She hugs him and says, "I love you so much, Grandpa, and if you love me, don't leave me." One day, he tells her that the school season has started and she won't see him again until the next spring. She returns home and asks her grandfather to take her to school so she can learn too. But her grandfather doesn't agree because the school is far away. Every day she would have to walk a long distance, and as winter sets in, Heidi starts feeling bored and doesn't know how to enjoy her time, especially after Peter left her. Her grandfather tries to entertain her by making a sled for them to skate on the ice. Indeed, they skate on the ice and are very happy, spending a wonderful time together. Heidi is at the peak of her happiness. Her grandfather takes her to Peter's house so she can greet him, and as soon as they meet, they hug each other and are very happy. Every day, her grandfather takes her to Peter and then carries her back on his shoulders because she can't walk on the snow. One day, the governess returns to the city and finds people willing to adopt Heidi. She arrives at the grandfather's house to take Heidi, but the grandfather gets angry with her and asks her to leave because Heidi is going to live with him. However, the governess is determined to take Heidi and bring her to people who will adopt her, as she wants to gain a benefit from them. So she waits for Heidi in a place far from the house, and as soon as she sees her, she hugs her and tells her that she found a big house where the family wants a beautiful girl like her to be a friend to their daughter. There, she will be able to learn and live a better life. But Heidi tells her that she is happy here and wants to live with her grandfather. So she lies to her and says, "Be quiet, your grandfather doesn't want you and he agreed for you to leave." Heidi gets upset and believes her aunt, and she's forced to go with her. They board the train together, and Heidi stands in the last carriage looking at the mountains and bidding farewell to her grandfather's house on the mountain. After a while, Peter arrives at the grandfather's house and says, "Did you see what happened?" The aunt took Heidi and left the city, so the grandfather runs through the city streets like a madman, continuing to search for her. The city residents saw him and were mocking him, saying, "How could a girl like Heidi, an innocent and poor child, live with someone as heartless as him?" But he doesn't care about their words and returns home, sad and missing Heidi. On the other side, the aunt arrives with Heidi at the house where she will be living. At that time, the maid sees Heidi and is disgusted by her, noting that she is dressed like a boy and walking barefoot without shoes. The maid pulls the aunt aside to talk and tells her that this girl is not suitable for them, doesn't fit their image, and won't be able to adapt to their lifestyle. The aunt tells her not to worry, that with time she will get used to them. The most important thing is to give her the money they agreed upon. Then the aunt leaves Heidi alone and walks away. Heidi meets Clara, the daughter of the house owner. We understand that her father and grandmother wanted a girl to live with her to keep her company in her loneliness. This is because Clara has partial paralysis and cannot play like other children. This is because she is in a wheelchair and cannot take a single step. But Clara had a kind heart and liked Heidi. Then it's time for lunch, and the nanny, Heidi, and Clara sit at the table. The nanny tells Heidi the house rules, which include not making noise in the house and following all orders quietly. We see that Heidi cannot eat with a spoon like them because she is not used to it. And from the exhaustion and hardship she experienced all day, she falls asleep sitting in her place. The next day, she wakes up for breakfast and still struggles to eat with a spoon. She was drinking from the bowl as she was used to, and at that moment, the nanny scolded her and asked her to eat with a spoon. But Clara told her not to be upset with her and said, "I will teach you how to eat with a spoon." She continued to teach her calmly and lovingly, and they spent a nice time together. After eating, they took a walk around the palace. And Heidi was pushing her chair and entertaining her so she wouldn't feel disabled. Then they reached Clara's mother's room, where there was a picture of Clara standing on her feet next to her mother. Heidi asked her how she was standing in the picture, and Clara explained that after her mother's death, she got sick and could no longer move, which was due to her grief over her mother. She told Heidi that she missed her mother very much and started crying, which made Heidi feel sad, and she comforted her. She told her, "From today, I am your sister and friend, and I will never leave you. Agreed?" Then it was time for Clara's private lesson, and the teacher asked Heidi to read a book. However, Heidi said she didn't know how to read, and the teacher discovered that she was completely illiterate and couldn't even read the letters. Heidi told him that Peter had said there was no point in education and that it was useless. The teacher got upset with her and told the maid that Heidi's level was terrible and that she needed to find another teacher for her. The maid replied, "What is your job? Your task is to teach her and make her understand." Heidi was still so attached to her grandfather that every time she entered a room, she tried to open the window to see the mountain where her grandfather's house was, but the windows were tightly closed and difficult to open. One day, she asked Sebastian, the head servant, and he was a very kind person who didn't want to upset her, so he actually opened the window for her and even brought her a stool to stand on. Heidi looked out the window and saw nothing but many houses in front of her, so she asked them, "Where are the mountains here?" They told her that to see the mountains, she needed to go to that church over there and stand on top of it, because it's the highest place in the city. The next day, Heidi took Clara, and they went out for a walk together, strolling through the city markets. Clara was happy because she didn't go out much, and she felt blessed to have a beautiful friend like Heidi. Heidi took her to the church and wanted to go up to look at the mountain, so Clara said to her, "I'll wait for you here while you go up. Indeed, Heidi climbed to the highest place in the church. But she was surprised to find that there were no mountains or anything, just houses in front of her. At that moment, she started to get scared and kept calling for her grandfather, feeling sad. Meanwhile, Didi entered Clara's room and was surprised to find her not there, so she asked the servants to search for her everywhere, but they couldn't find her. Stipes understood that they probably went to the church, so he left the house to look for them. Indeed, Stipes met them while they were walking through the city streets and took them back home. As soon as Didi saw them, she yelled at Heidi because she was the reason for what happened. And Clara tried to defend her. But the nanny said, "No, it's none of your business. Don't interfere with the upbringing of the children. Let me tell you something. What do you think about her being punished and not eating?" And she makes Heidi get up from the meal while she's hungry and makes her stand by the wall as a punishment. Heidi gets upset with the nanny's treatment of her, takes off the dress she's wearing, puts on her old clothes, and insists on leaving the place entirely and walking away. But she can't bring herself to leave without saying goodbye to Clara, so she hugs her before leaving. At that moment, the nanny sees her hugging Clara and asks, "Where are you going, sweetheart?" Heidi replies, "I'm going to Grandpa because I'm upset." But the nanny grabs her and throws her bag so she can't go anywhere. Heidi says, "I'm scared and I want to go to Grandpa." At that moment, Clara sees that Heidi is determined to leave, and she gets upset and starts crying because she has grown fond of her and become attached to her. When Heidi sees her friend Clara crying, she changes her mind and decides to stay. At that time, Clara becomes very upset due to her sadness and feels that those around her don't love her. So Heidi goes in to reassure her and says, "Don't be upset with me. I'm sorry. Believe me, I will never leave you." Clara forgives her and says, "I love you too." Then Heidi asks her about her father and grandmother. She tells her that they are coming back from their trip tomorrow, and indeed, the next day Clara's father and grandmother return. They were kind and sweet people and welcomed Heidi warmly. However, the strict nanny complains about her, saying that Heidi doesn't fit in with them, that she is a failure and that she can't read, making it difficult for her to live in such a clean place. But the grandmother doesn't believe her and says, "I will deal with her and judge for myself." The grandmother goes to Heidi before she sleeps and starts telling her a story about shepherds, and Heidi was enjoying the story. But the grandmother only tells half of the story, so Heidi asks her to finish it. The grandmother tells her, "If you learn to read, you will be able to find out the end of the story by yourself." She did this to motivate Heidi to learn to read. Indeed, Heidi stays up all night learning how to read, and in the morning she continues reading until she manages to learn some letters correctly. She attends a private lesson with Clara, and the teacher is surprised that her level has improved. The whole family was watching her and they were pleased with her. They keep clapping for her and encouraging her. Days pass, and the grandmother is returning to her home again. She says goodbye to her daughters, and they are sad that she is leaving. In the middle of the night, one of the maids hears the palace door opening by itself, so she gets scared and calls for Steps, telling him what happened. They were frightened and suspected that the house might be haunted. The next day, they tell Clara's father what happened, saying that the palace is probably haunted. But the father told them, "What ghosts? I don't believe this talk." And he calls his friend, the doctor, asking him to stay up with him to see about this ghost issue. While they were sitting in the middle of the night, they were surprised by the sound of the door opening, so they take their weapons and quietly go down to see who is opening the door. They are surprised to find Heidi opening the door, and the doctor discovers that she is sleepwalking. He waits until she returns to her room and lies down on the bed. Then he wakes her up. He asks her what she was dreaming about while she was asleep, and she tells him she was dreaming about her grandfather because she misses him. At that moment, he understands that she misses her grandfather a lot and is suffering because of it. The doctor tells Clara's father that Heidi misses her grandfather and needs to leave because she might develop a psychological condition. But the father doesn't like this idea and insists that she stay with his daughter because his daughter feels happy when Heidi is around, as Heidi entertains her and plays with her. However, the doctor gets upset and leaves. The father spends the whole night thinking about the matter, not wanting to be unfair to the poor girl. In the end, he decides to let Heidi return home. The next day, he sits down to talk with his daughter Clara to convince her, but Clara gets upset and breaks everything in front of her. As soon as she sees Heidi, she yells at her and says, "If you want to leave, then go. I was wrong to love you and consider you my friend. I hope if you leave, you don't come back here again." At that moment, the nanny takes her and leads her to her room. The father sits with Heidi and says, "Look, my daughter, I won't force you to stay here. If you want to return to your grandfather and live with him, I have no problem with that." Even Heidi becomes very happy, but she remembers her friend Clara and goes up to say goodbye to her. Heidi keeps knocking on her door, but Clara is sad and refuses to say goodbye. After that, Stibsy takes her to her village, and the villagers, as soon as they see her, are delighted and couldn't believe how beautiful she has become, wearing new clothes and looking sweet. And Peter, as soon as he sees her, is very happy and hugs her. Then she runs towards her grandfather because she missed him so much. On the way, she takes off the dress she was wearing because she felt trapped in it. She runs and calls out to her grandfather at the top of her voice. As soon as he hears her, he can't believe his ears from the joy. So he runs to her crying and takes her in his arms. It was one of the happiest moments of their lives, and she continues her life with her grandfather happily. But from time to time, she missed her friend Clara because she missed her. One day, Heidi writes a letter to Clara asking her to come and visit. At that time, the grandmother receives Heidi's letter and reads it to Clara. Clara was sad because she missed Heidi too, so the grandmother takes her to Heidi's house to cheer her up. As soon as they meet, they hug each other and are extremely happy. Heidi's grandfather sits with Clara's grandmother and she tells him, "I will leave Clara with you for a few days to change the atmosphere with Heidi and then I will take her back." The grandfather agrees and is happy about the matter, saying to her, "Clara is like my daughter and I will take care of her." Heidi and Clara spend happy times together and play all day long. However, Peter feels jealous because Clara has taken his friend away from him, to the extent that one day he wants to take revenge on Clara, so he takes her wheelchair and throws it from a high place on the hill. At that time, they all wake up and don't find Clara's chair, and they keep searching for it everywhere, but it is nowhere to be found. The grandfather suspects that Peter did it because Clara took Heidi away from him, so he is forced to carry Clara on his shoulder and walk to Peter's place. As soon as he arrives, he sits Clara down and then tells Peter, "I know what you did, and to forgive you, I will ask you for a request that you must fulfill. I will leave the two girls with you, and I want you to take care of them. Do you hear me?" Indeed, he leaves the two girls and walks away. Clara sees the mountains for the first time, the ones Heidi always talked about, and she is amazed by the beauty that Heidi lives in. At that moment, Heidi tells her, "Stay where you are. I will go get you some berries and come back." While Clara is sitting, she feels a butterfly walking on her legs. It is a shock for her because she is supposed to have lost sensation in her legs, so she tries to move her toes. She is surprised to find that they start moving, so she leans on the rock next to her and manages to stand up. When Heidi sees her, she is shocked and can't believe that her friend is standing on her legs. She runs to her and supports her, and Peter helps as well, supporting her so she can walk, and she starts walking on her own. It was the most beautiful surprise. After a while, Clara's father arrives, upset and cursing, not believing that the grandmother brought her to such an environment. As soon as he sees the grandfather, he yells at him, asking where his daughter is. Then he hears his daughter calling, and when he looks, he is shocked for his life. He is surprised to see his daughter walking on her own, and both he and the grandmother are so astonished that they can't speak. They start crying out of joy, and Clara goes to them herself and hugs them. The father thanks Grandma Heidi for everything she did because she stood by their daughter and helped her. He apologizes for coming upset and cursing. Clara hugs Heidi while crying. She tells her, "You are the most beautiful friend I've ever had in my life, and you made up for all the sad moments I've lived through." Clara walks away with her father and grandmother, leaving Heidi happy. Heidi starts focusing on her education and goes to school because she understands the importance of education. She decides to become a story writer, and the first story she writes is about her own life.